Welcome to NHMR's Sponsor Spotlight, where each month we highlight one of our sponsors, put a face to the company name, and get their perspective on the current real estate market. It's currently June 16th, 2021. I say that because the market has been changing so quickly that you almost have to pin down any conversation about conditions. I think we all know at this point the supply-demand imbalance that we're seeing, but I'm just interested to hear from you guys your take on working in this market, and I'm also interested to hear your advice to other realtors in navigating this unusual market and what you're saying to some of your agents. So I'll start with you, David.
So I was around in 2005 in our last boom. Historically, market cycles were 8 to 10 years, and this one kind of went about 16. The inventory is much more scarce than it was then. New home construction has been very slow the last few years, even before COVID. In 2019, they started slowing down considerably. What's interesting about this market, I think, too, from the 2005 is I feel like this is really spread more into the second-tier home. Not just the entry-level, first-time home buyers, but it's throughout the entire market seems to be accelerating evenly. I think this is going to be around for a while just because the inventory is low. I think eventually realtors will be able to price things. We'll have other price comparisons, so I think that may slow down the 60 showings in a weekend and over ask. And just in terms of what's there, I think everyone just needs to kind of take a deep breath. It's just as difficult for a buyer agent to try and get answers from the selling agent or the listing agent as it is for the listing agent to communicate to 40 other people. It's not easy for a listing agent to coordinate 50, 60 showings and get 30 offers and present them all and to do their job diligently. If there's the one thing I can say to newer agents, stop, take a deep breath, and fill out the contracts correctly. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we're seeing. I just closed a deal with a new agent, no idea this was her first deal. She was a rock star throughout. She always said, if she didn't have the answer, I'll get back to you. And she did. So I think that's one of the things is, if you fill out the contract correctly, if it's FHA, make sure you do the math right. If it's conventional, make sure you do the math right. Just comb it over, give it a once over, look at it, make sure you dotted your I's and crossed your T's. Yeah. I think that makes things a lot easier for everybody in the transactions moving forward.
I think that's great advice to anyone coming into the business and for anyone working in this environment. I think that's spot on. Do you have anything you'd want to add to that? Or
a lot of the similar things. Yeah. A lot of what we do, very, very good agents, you do a lot of the little things, but you do them every day. So being prepared, like public speaking, you're doing a lot of these different things. Preparation it makes everything easier. And then for any agent, make the phone call. Call the mortgage broker just to confirm that they saw documents, that they have documents before you accept an offer. And doing that because we're flooded with, information. We're flooded with phone calls and text messages and everything else. So making the phone call, personal touch, always goes a long way.
Take the time, do it right, and have systems in place. And you can do business in this market, but it is, and actually there's a lot being done. Right. But it does feel like there's a high stress sense of urgency that can impact the transaction. So in terms of that environment that we're in right now, you touched upon it a little bit. I think you mentioned you saw maybe some more inventory coming on. Things obviously eventually have to level out. And there's no crystal ball to answer this, and no one knows, but I am curious your take for, your individual take on just where timeline you think we start to see a little bit more of balance. Is that something we see in 3 to 6 months? Is it a year out?
I think probably through next spring, definitely. I just don't see the inventory coming on enough. Even if there are sellers who didn't want to sell because of COVID or, because of the market conditions, I don't think enough are going to come into the market. I think there's been a serious housing shortage in Connecticut for a while. Even in 2019, if you go back that far, there still was low inventory. We just didn't have this rush of buyers. And I think a lot of people sat on the sidelines. They talked about millennials, first-time home buyers. The age was shifting, from 25 to 28, things like that. So eventually that just kind of catches up with things. And I don't see this as being a bubble. I think this is sort of a market correction. And usually when we say that, we mean a negative market correction in the price drop. But I think this is a market correction because we didn't have almost no appreciation, since really 2007, 2008. There's been a little bit, but not we didn't come back the way the rest of the country did. So I think this is just Connecticut correcting, and I think we're correcting up.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point of view, and I've heard other people talk about it that way. On one hand, you see very rapid appreciation over a short period of time, and some people have the view what goes up must go down. But on the other hand, you can make an argument that perhaps we were undervalued at the beginning of this. I mean, it's interesting. People assume as realtors that we just want to see, a hot market constantly, but I think everybody watching knows that a balanced market, a healthy market, is really what we all want in the long run. And that's the other thing, volume's impacted when there's a lack of inventory. In terms of solving that problem in Connecticut, do you see construction as a solution to that, or do you think it's more just getting to past the COVID period where maybe some inventory is opening out, where that baby boom generation that's been this frontline story for a long time moving out, do we almost need more of that to happen? Are we able to build more? Do you think condos are going to come back? What are your predictions on how we get a little more inventory?
There's a whole different need, I think, or desire for housing, right? So in New Haven, like the Corsair and the Autobahn, where you have bars, restaurants downstairs, you have your apartment, your condo, whatever it is, and there's common spaces, there's gyms, there's amenities, parking readily available. I think there's a more need for that than 2,000 square foot home. I think people want different things now. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes and where that push runs into. So with COVID again in New Haven, parking garages, they're talking about taking the roof levels of some parking garages and do housing, because you have square footage that's being wasted right now. So I think that's going to be an interesting turn. Like a lot of things that we saw through COVID, the shortages and supplies and all of these things, I think that's going to be an interesting to see what actually comes out and what actually turns around when things get back to normal.
It'll be interesting too to see how much New York City rebounds and how much this work from home kind of takes into play. How many people are going back to work, and it seems like most companies are going to do a mix of at home and in the office and kind of balance back and forth. But we'll see how long that goes. I mean, a lot of our market was driven from New York. There's a lot of New York buyers that were coming here from the city. So we'll see how long that lasts. I mean, when 9/11 hit, I know New York City got hit pretty hard. It took about a year, 18 months really for New York to come back, and they came back thriving. So, really a lot of that depends on, where those people are and if they do return back to the city. I know that's a lot of the rental crush was people coming up. There's a lot of out-of-state renters. I don't really see that as much in the buyers, although they're definitely there, but I think definitely in the rental market, it's a bigger factor. When they're coming in hard and heavy, and they're used to spending big bucks on small square footage there. So the fact that a lot of people from New York can work remotely, we'll see if they return back to work and what that does for us here.
Sure, yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, all these factors are at play, and to predict where it all lands depends on how you tune those individual dials, and who knows. So I think, as you said, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it lands. We'll continue doing the work we do, and I want to thank you both for joining us today to talk about the market, about RE/MAX Showcase, and for being a sponsor of NHMR. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.